Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, Joe Biden has made a series of bizarre statements. I mean, the list goes on and on. Basically, every single time he opens his mouth, there's a facepalm moment. And just the other day during a press conference, Joe Biden said this.
How many times have you heard, I'll bet everybody knows somebody somewhere along the line, that in an intimate relationship, what happened was the guy takes a revealing picture of his naked friend or whatever in a compromising position, and then literally, in a sense, blackmails or mortifies that person. Send it out, put it online.
Which was very, very bizarre for the president to be going on about. And then literally the next day, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, I'm kind of in the school of thought these days that in the world of politics, there's no such thing as a coincidence. The next day, the New York Times, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, now finally admits that the laptop from hell, Hunter Biden's infamous laptop, was in fact not a Russian plant, Russian propaganda to discredit Joe Biden and his family, and that it was in fact his actual laptop and it was real. Surprise, surprise, anybody with eyeballs who saw the pictures of Hunter Biden already knew this. I mean, you can't Photoshop that kind of realistic photo. And so much of the context of those emails has been essentially verified by people around Hunter Biden. Now, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not why Joe Biden would be talking about this stuff. People in relationships taking compromised pictures of each other, and of course all the pictures of Hunter Biden. But what I do know is that I want to talk about the laptop from hell today and give you guys some updates on what's going on here. But of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so take a look at this. Exclusive. They're as slow as Joe. Sleepy New York Times finally wakes up and admits Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop is real, a year after the DailyMail.com authenticated its content and broke dozens of stories about his shady dealings. Here's the TLDR, the little synopsis. The New York Times admitted the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop are indeed authentic in a report about his business dealings published this week. The MacBook Pro was recovered in October 2020 after the president's son left it at a repair shop in Wilmington, Delaware in April 2019 and never returned for it. When files from the device were first published ahead of the 2020 election, the New York Times cast doubt on its provenance and linked it to, quote, Russian disinformation. On Wednesday, the paper changed its tune in an article referencing the files, which they confirmed were, quote, authenticated by people familiar with them. Last March, the DailyMail.com authenticated the laptop and was the first and only news organization to publicly verify its contents using expert analysis. The DailyMail.com can also reveal that the Washington Post has had a copy of the laptop hard drive for over 6 months, but has failed to admit it or report on it. And here we go again down the same road that we've been before, the media corruption. These are, quote, authoritative sources. Legacy mainstream media, been around for 100 years, sometimes more. They're supposed to walk around with this aura of credibility, but they are nothing but Democrat operatives, nothing but political propagandists who lied and hid the truth in an effort to get Joe Biden elected. Let's talk about influence in American elections. The Democrats are always going on about Russia, Russia, Russia. They crafted that narrative, and then they even used that narrative to discredit this laptop without any facts whatsoever. Goes to show the lack of journalistic integrity and lack of journalistic ethics. Not to mention, talk about influencing an election. We've seen and analyzed this data before. Here's a flashback from the Post-Millennial on a poll that we covered months ago, maybe even over a year ago. 16% of Biden voters would have voted differently if Hunter Biden laptop story was not suppressed by the media and big tech. Joe Biden has the corrupt media doing his bidding and protecting him, ensuring that he gets elected. Meanwhile, Donald Trump gets the opposite. Nothing but phony, salacious, manufactured faux outrage scandal one after another. Donald Trump gets media hit pieces, totally fabricated. Joe Biden has a real substantive scandal, and he gets off scot-free. Who's manipulating the minds of millions of users on social media? Is it a couple Russian bots? Or is it the Washington Post? Is it the New York Times? Or the social media companies themselves that all buried the story and created this false narrative that it was somehow a Russian plant? I mean, for Pete's sakes, even Biden was pushing that same narrative.
So what about the Americans who really today only want me to ask you about Hunter Biden's laptop? How are you going to get them to see that you are fighting for them when they're so dead set against you?
There's nothing to any of that. Nothing to any of that. It's all a smear. Every major outfit, every serious investigator has pointed out that this is a smear. This is classic Trump. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged.
That's the narrative that these Democrat swamp creatures created, and then of course the media went with it, then of course the White House is going to adopt it. Jen Psaki literally said that the laptop from hell was, quote, a Russian plant. Here she is just being questioned on it the other day.
The New York Times has authenticated emails that appear to have come from a laptop abandoned by Hunter Biden in Delaware. The president previously said that the New York Post story about this was a bunch of garbage and that it was a Russian plant. Does he stand by that assessment?
I pointed the Department of Justice and also to Hunter Biden's representatives. He doesn't work in the government.
And if I may, you asked about Hunter Biden's laptop. You also, in October 2020, dismissed it as Russian disinformation. Do you stand by that assessment?
Again, I pointed the Department of Justice and Hunter Biden's representatives. I'm a spokesperson for the United States. He doesn't work for the United States.
And of course, this White House never has to answer for the lies and propaganda, the absolute dishonesty. That should have been the biggest story of the 2020 election, but instead it lasted a couple weeks. You literally got banned for talking about it or for linking the story on Twitter and Facebook, and the media machine went into overdrive trying to discredit and bury the story in order to save Joe Biden from the fallout. A disgusting level of corruption. Now we're seeing the White House use random 20-year-old TikTok stars to push their propaganda. We're seeing them have secret meetings with massive media companies and networks in order to push positive economic news despite the clear economic devastation that's happening to the middle class. And the whole picture seems to come together. It seems to all come full circle. You see exactly what's going on here. The media manipulation, the corruption that exists on the Democrat side. And it's even worse than you think about it because the corrupt media essentially worked and colluded with the DNC to do what? To cover up more corruption. Corrupt actors covering up corruption. Hunter Biden making millions of dollars in Ukraine, millions of dollars in China, millions of dollars everywhere, and the mystery of who the big guy is. 10% for the big guy. I mean, Mr. Bobrovsky literally went on Tucker Carlson's show, a clip that has amassed over 10 million views on Fox News and across social media, possibly even more. I mean, just the YouTube clip is almost at 10 million views. And he explicitly said that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were both involved in their corrupt business dealings and influence peddling across the world. And the laptop had more information and what could be even argued as evidence suggesting exactly that, and possibly implicating the current president of the United States. And the media seems just uninterested at best. But of course, it's not uninterested. The media wanted you to believe that not only were they not interested, but that it wasn't true and that it was Russian misinformation. The same cop-out, the same scapegoat that they always use. I mean, truly despicable stuff. And stuff that once again we must get answers to. Understanding the corrupt business dealings between these Washington swamp creatures in China and Ukraine, how are we supposed to believe anything or take anything face value as to what the media tells us about what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and China? After all the false stories and false propaganda, the deceit and the lies and the corruption, how are we supposed to take their word for it? You'd have to be an absolute fool to just trust anything that your government tells you on face value, and you'd have to be an extra fool to trust anything that CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, The Washington Post tell you on face value. It's yet again the same situation playing out. We cover this stuff, we cover it honestly, we give it the light of day, and we are labeled as conspiracy theorists and as right-wing talking points pushing Russian propaganda. That's literally what they tell you right now if you question anything in relation to NATO with what's going on in Eastern Europe right now. But in the end, it seems as though time cures all. Sunlight's the greatest disinfectant, and so is time. It seems as though the conspiracy theorists are proven right every time. How many stories have we covered that the media discredited? I mean, from Russiagate and the myriad of phony fake scandals surrounding Donald Trump and his family, to all the stories throughout the pandemic that the media in the end had to admit that what was initially labeled as a conspiracy theory was actually just conspiracy. Cut out the theory. And this brings it right back to life, folks. It's always the same thing. It's the same notion, the same concept. Why was the DNC, the media, and social media so hellbent on avoiding this story, on hiding it from the public? The question is, what did they have to hide? It once again opens up your eyes to the corruption of the DNC, the corruption of the media, the corruption of these globalist entities. And we should be asking ourselves once again the exact same question. Is Joe Biden the big guy? 10% for the big guy. Who else could it possibly be? The moment Republicans take over the House and take over the Senate, there should be two priorities when it comes to investigating investigations. 1. The Hunter Biden laptop and finding out who the big guy is, and 2. Finally getting some closure and getting to the bottom, getting to the end of Hillary Clinton's Russiagate nonsense, both of which are not partisan witch hunts, but rather valid investigations of government corruption. There's clearly a distinct difference. The investigations into Donald Trump were a nothing burger. There was no there. When it comes to the Biden and Clinton crime families, there is a whole lot of there. Let's just leave it at that. That's what I got for you guys, though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I'm going to get back to work, though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.